Again, work with a fiduciary, have a financial plan, make sure your investments are aligned with that plan. To me, it's that simple. I think
That's it.
when you start buying other products or annuities, you're drifting from a plan more than likely. And I don't know if that always makes sense.
Welcome to Upticks with Jake Falcon, founder and CEO of Falcon Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, we help high net worth individuals overcome financial complexities. We do this by enhancing financial literacy and discussing topics in a language free from industry jargon. Join us as we help explain exactly what having a solid financial plan means, as Jake draws from years of experience in helping hundreds of individuals get financially organized and focused on their goals. We hope you find Upticks educational, entertaining, and shareable. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to Upticks with Jake and Cory. Cory, welcome back to the show.
Jake, thank you for having me.
And I know you recently took baby Daisy on a vacation. So tell us about it.
Yes, first road trip. We went to Table Rock Lake and back. We were down there for 3 nights, went with my in-laws and my sister-in-law and my niece, who's a senior in high school. So we had a great trip. She did really well in the car, did pretty well sleeping somewhere that wasn't home. Took her to Dogwood Canyon, Jake, which is a big outdoor nature reserve. She got in the pool for the first time. So all good stuff. And it was all exciting. But overall, we felt pretty good about it, all things considered, for traveling. Because I knew before that trip, it's like taking a 4-month baby on a first vacation. I know it's a road trip here, not too far away. But this does have the potential to blow up in our face. And the good news is it went great. So we had a good time.
Awesome. Well, good. I'm glad. Do you think baby Daisy will remember this vacation?
I don't, but maybe she will. Maybe she'll surprise me. Maybe she will. What's new with you, Jake?
2 things. I played in a golf tournament with some buddies. I had a great time. Cory's at Blue Hills Country Club here in Kansas City. It was a 2-dayer. A lot of fun, a lot of laughs, a lot of great golf shots, a lot of bad golf shots. So it was a good time. Golf course was in great shape. So credit to Blue Hills. The greens were actually pretty good.
Great.
And I'm reading a book. I don't know if you're reading this one in our book club. It's called The Art of Learning. Are you reading that one?
I am.
How far along are you?
Not far at all. I've got a lot of catching up to do.
What page are you? What page are you on? Do you know?
Probably 30 or 40.
Okay, I'm not too far ahead of you. I think I'm like on page 70-ish.
Okay.
I've been really enjoying it though. So for our audience, it's about that. If you remember that movie, Searching for Bobby Fischer, it's about Josh Waitzkin. Yeah, Josh Waitzkin, who was this champion chess player, who then went on to be a champion. What is it? Taekwondo, hands fighting, whatever that's called, wrists. I don't know what it's called, but anyways, basically it's a book written by him about how he learned to do these 2 things at a very high level. I really enjoyed it. So one of my good friends recommended it to me, and so we're doing it as a book club at Falcon Wealth Advisors, and I do recommend it. I'm not done with it, but I do recommend it. I've really enjoyed it. It's an old book. It's been out for a while. So
Yep.
All right, cool. So before we go into headlines, Cory, we did have some listener suggestions. I also put a comment in here that I wanted to talk about, Cory. So I'll just kind of read off what I wanted to say here, if that's all right. And then I want to hear your thoughts on it. So I was thinking about this the other day. I don't even know where I was. I don't know if I was at home or in the car or whatever. But as you know, I think a lot about financial planning and investments. I think a lot about our clients. And to me, this is kind of boils it down a little bit. It's all important. Everything's important when it comes to your finances. How much you make for a living is important. How much you save is important. And how much you spend are all important. And my point here, Cory, is that I think people sometimes get caught up in only one of those things. And instead, I would like to see everyone zoom out and look at the big picture. And in my opinion, it's actually much easier to manage your financial plan when you have zoomed out versus, oh my gosh, I'm so freaked out. Me and my wife, we spend way too much money, blah, blah, blah. Or we're not saving enough. It bothers me that we don't max out our 401ks. Or I wish I could get a raise. My boss hasn't given me a raise in 2 years, whatever. But if you can add all 3 of those together and make all of those dance or marry the 3 of those, then you can start having a well thought out financial plan. But my point is they are all important, not just one of them. I think people get caught up on one of them. Do you have any thoughts on this?
You're spot on. It's really good because I do think how much you make doesn't matter if you're not saving any money, right? And how much money you spend might be indicative of how much money you make. But again, it's not going to help anything as far as the way of savings goes. So taking a moment to zoom out and look at the big picture is absolutely right, Jake, because I do think that as an example that, growing your income is something that can be applicable for a lot of people in their financial plan, but that people are focused on everything else, right? How much they save, how much they spend, versus if you grow your income, that may enable you to do both things. Whether
Right.
that's somebody who's still working or even someone who's retired, wants to do something to help create some more income, and that's okay. But I think that we do need to keep all of those in focus.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, in this gig economy, there's a lot of ways
Yep.
for a retiree to make money. A lot more ways than when I got into this business. When I got in this business, Cory, it was go marshal at a golf course for free golf,
Walmart
go work
greeter.
at Walmart as a greeter,
Yep.
right? There wasn't a lot. Now, geez, with so many companies allowing remote work, you could probably be a consultant for your company, work from home. You could be an Uber driver now, a Postmates delivery person. You can write a blog. You could create a YouTube show and monetize it. There's all kinds of ways to do things that weren't really relevant a decade ago. So anyways, yeah, lots of opportunity out there. Cory, I got one here for you. This is from a listener, and thank you for whoever sent this in. They put, what? No way. More truth about income equality. What was he talking about, Cory?
Yes. So there is a new study that says, Jake, check this out. The more you work, the more skills you gain, and the more you earn, which I think is the what? No way the comment came from. So this was, and thank you for our listener for sending, or viewer for sending this in. I did dive a little bit further here, Jake, and this was really interesting because there was a rich supply of survey data that tracked people back to 1979, and it found a major determinant of total lifetime hours worked is actually individual choice, which this, I think, ties a lot into what we've talked about on this show in the last month or so. Because the main point, and I wanted to read this out, Jake, is that the overlapping effects of different preferences for work and different levels of skills acquisition account for a hefty share of overall differences in lifetime earnings. And these factors operate independent of other factors like the level of education or skills and individual gains before entering the labor force. So in other words, income inequality is in part a matter of choice rather than intractable economic or social forces, which I thought was a really interesting observation.
That is interesting. So they're getting at hours worked as a choice. And if the more you work, the better you get at your job and the more you get paid is what they're coming down to.
Because
So
the more you work, you acquire more skills. The more skills you acquire, the more you have the ability to earn. But it really all starts with a choice to work.
So are they suggesting that lower income people are lazy?
I don't think
harsh
so,
comment.
but
No?
I did take with that. That was a question that I asked myself when I read this. And I think that the author, this was an opinion, article. And I do think what the author was getting at is that, income inequality is something that is discussed at a really high level, and it means different things to different people. And a lot of people have really strong opinions. But I think the point that they were making here is that at the end of the day, the choice to work and the choice to acquire more skills during work can be a direct contributor to how well you do, regardless of your level of education or the skills that you earned before you entered the workforce.
Have you ever met a hard worker that wasn't successful? And I'm not talking about rich. I'm talking about successful. Like, have you ever met somebody that was a hard worker that wasn't successful? I don't know if I have.
Yeah, no, not really. And I think a lot of that probably is like, how someone defines success, but I'm with you in that, yes, my observation is that people that are hard workers are typically not the ones that are grappling with, whether or not they're successful. For better
That's
or
a
for
great
worse.
point.
Whether people love it or hate it.
Well, and that's one of our core values is tenacity. You and I are perfectly aligned with that. Like, hard work is paramount. Now, it's not the only thing that's important, right? But it is very important that I just feel that way. I don't know if it's my parents. I don't know where it came from. Probably my parents, I would think. I don't know where else I would have gotten that from.
Mm-hmm.
But I just despise laziness, despise it. And I've learned to become more patient, but that doesn't mean you're lazy. You can be patient and a hard worker. You don't, just because you're a hard worker doesn't mean you're impatient.
Right.
So again, you gotta, to me, I think that's the key. Work hard. Whatever you do, you should be trying to do it the best you can. Why not? Why not? So anyways,
That's right.
it's easy
That's
for me
right.
to say, maybe. I don't know. So
I think it's a privilege, though, in our country, right, to be able to work, Jake, for you and I to be able to have our own business. It is a privilege.
yes,
And it is one that we don't take for granted. So, and I'm very grateful for all of that. But at the end of the day, to your point and to what this article was talking about, there's been a lot of hard work along the way. And that's something that I think we can hang our hats on and be proud of. But
right.
that's not going to change. But without the hard work, there aren't as many things that happen.
Right. Right. Exactly. Good. Good. Well, thank you, Cory. And before we kick it off here, I want to thank all of our audience for tuning in. Our subscriber count continues to grow. Please, if you love Upticks or even if you like it, give us a thumbs up, 5-star review. Please share this content with your family and friends. The whole point of the show is to enhance financial literacy. Also, if you're not subscribed to our weekly email newsletter, simply email Luke at falconwealthadvisors.com, and Luke will make sure that you get subscribed. We send out more than just Upticks on our weekly email newsletter. We actually have mini blogs from several groups on our team, so you get more content and more information from your friends at Falcon Wealth Advisors. So with that, Cory, let's take it away.
Play ball. All right, Jake. Social Security is giving retirees a 2.5% increase, the smallest raise in years.
Yeah, and I know, Cory, for some people on Social Security, this is disappointing. And some people have complained about it. And I get it. 2.5% is not a lot of money. And my perspective is not everything grows at the rate of inflation. You and I have talked about this on the show. For example, I think the study or the article mentioned that groceries may have increased a lot more than 2.5% year over year. But this is my concern about this, though, Cory. And again, it's okay if you're complaining, you want to get grumpy about it. Not you, but whoever. But my concern is that how many Americans rely too much on Social Security. And I understand everyone that works and qualifies, or everyone that works is basically paying into it. So I get it that they want to get theirs back. But the real problem to me, Cory, is that Social Security has been mismanaged by our government and that people don't save enough for themselves, right? So there's two problems there. The government has mismanaged it and people aren't taking care of themselves enough. What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the 2.5% raise and people being upset about it?
I understand it. I think that exactly for the reason that you talked about, Jake, something like groceries, for example. I mean, anybody could point to any one thing year over year and talk about how it's up way more or way less than the CPI adjustment. My opinion still, Jake, is that, how all of the data that measures into CPI is ultimately tracked and evaluated is part of the issue, because that's, again, my opinion, that the way that what the cost of living adjustment is intended to do and how people feel being so misaligned is part of the issue. But I do think that you bring up a great point, and probably the point that's the most relevant here, which is if I'm going into retirement next year, Jake, and I am reliant upon how much of a cost of living adjustment my Social Security benefits from the government are going to provide to me, how much that determines my lifestyle in retirement is really something that I don't want to be a major driver of my retirement. And for that reason, I think that, ultimately saving and planning and managing things for yourself is the answer. But that's my thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes clients will want to take Social Security out of their financial plan and act like it's not there. I think that's a little extreme. So I think it should be factored in, certainly, to a well thought out financial plan. But I agree with you, Cory. I think ideally it doesn't impact you too much. And if you need more money because of inflation, you have enough in investments that you can pull from there if Social Security doesn't give you the raise that you need. And so, again, this is easy for me to say, right? I'm in my 40s, you're in your 30s. What am I to say if somebody's in their 60s and their 70s and they're done working, right? And so I think if you are done working and the Social Security raise isn't adequate to keep up with your lifestyle, then you need to revisit your lifestyle. And that, like we just talked about at the beginning of the show, maybe you need to go back to work. Maybe you need to look at your budget, put down the jelly beans and stop buying them. They're not good for you anyways. And let's get real about where you're spending money. So again, those are some tough conversations. That's what we're qualified to do as wealth advisors. So if anybody's struggling with that, certainly let us know. We can certainly give you some counseling on how to look at your overall financial plan. I get it. 2.5% is not a lot of money, but they got to base it off something, Cory, is the issue. Like if they just did a standard raise every year,
Right.
the problem is, again, Social Security has been mismanaged. So there's not a lot of money to go around anyways. So anyways, it's a problem. I think there's a lot of things they can do to fix it. I don't know if they're going to fix it unless they absolutely have to. And so we'll see. We'll just keep rolling with it. And that's why we have jobs, is to work that into people's financial plans and help them have a sustainable retirement, regardless of what Social Security does, ideally. All right, good, Cory. Let's move. You want to move on?
Let's move on.
All right, let's move on, Cory. Senator Warren says insurance industry kickbacks cost retirement savers billions. What are we talking about, Cory?
All right. So Senator Elizabeth Warren had a report that was recently published that I just wanted to share some findings from this. So let's set our politics aside here for a moment. And I just want to read through, Jake, some of the what was pointed out here. So this new report painted the insurance industry, Jake, as being full of conflicts of interest that reward financial professionals with lavish trips and other perks for promoting retirement products with steep fees that can cost savers billions of dollars.
Crazy.
One of the quotes in this story, Jake, these secret kickbacks hurt consumers by incentivizing agents to sell certain products because they will earn a bigger cash bonus or a fancier vacation, not because they are in the best interest of their customers. The report also estimates that retirement savers stand to lose up to 20% of their retirement income to conflicted advice, which that's quite the estimate.
That's a lot.
Those mingled incentives cost savers up to $5 billion a year in fixed indexed annuities alone, Jake, according to this report. So where I want to bring all of this home, Jake, and where I'd love your thoughts on this, is that insurance groups have argued that fiduciary regulation is a bad fit for the industry, particularly for salespeople who make one-time recommendations and don't have an enduring relationship with their customers like investment advisors do. And I think this is a really important distinction, because when it comes to your retirement, do you want to hire a trusted advisor, or do you want to hire a salesperson who is ultimately arguing that fiduciary regulation is not a good thing for someone that doesn't have a relationship, who only sells stuff? But what are your thoughts on this, Jake?
Right. I agree, Cory. I don't think retirement should be transactional.
Right.
Hopefully, your retirement lasts 30 years.
That's right.
So you don't want to have if your retirement was a 1 year, like if you were buying a car, like a car is a transaction, right? I don't need to meet with my car salesman every 6 months, right? Or whatever. I'm making a transaction. I'm trying to get the car for the cheapest price. They're trying to sell it to me for the highest price, and we're done.
Yep.
Let my car salesman go on a trip, whatever, because he sold me a car. I don't care. Because I'm not going to drive that car for 30 years, or that car doesn't need to last me. Now, if I was buying a car, Cory, and it needed to last me 30 years, I would want a good car salesman. I would want a good mechanic. I would want, to know where I get tires and where I can get my oil change, and I would want a relationship. So I know this is a weird analogy, but I think you're right. I agree with what you said. With your retirement, it shouldn't be. Here's the problem, though, Cory. Then what are you going to do with all these annuity salesmen? What are they supposed to do? Go out of business?
It's a good question. Question. I don't know. I think it's more, from my point of view, Jake, and this has more to do with not what I think is right and wrong, but it more has to do with education of the consumer. Because we've talked about it on the show, and you and I have met with a lot of people over the years. We've met with enough people that have some sort of product that was sold to them that they need help unwinding or making a change or an adjustment to. And my point is, this article and this report that was published is just stating, look, here's some of the issues that exist as far as insurance products as investments go. Here's where some of the incentives might not be aligned for the consumer. And ultimately, if you are going to hire someone to help you plan for retirement, do you want to hire a fiduciary advisor, or do you want to hire a salesperson? So I think that this does an effective job of shining a light on that, because people need to be educated and people need to understand the choices they make around their own retirement are important, because ideally people are only retiring one time, right? And we don't want to treat that as a one-time transaction. We want to treat that as a season of life, right? As a multi-decade plan that we can give people guidance through, as opposed to here's a product for the next 30 years that'll fix everything. So anyway, that's my perspective.
Yeah, I think the disclosures, right, need to be clear and blatant.
Yes.
And then if somebody wants to do it, sure. But again, I think the disclosures, the confusion, the education for the consumer, it's one of the reasons of the show. Again, we don't like annuities. Our clients know that. They may make sense for the right fit, but we just don't see it that way. And so, again, work with a fiduciary, have a financial plan, make sure your investments are aligned with that plan. To me, it's that simple. I think
that's it.
When you start buying other products or annuities, you're drifting from a plan more than likely. And I don't know if that always makes sense.
And I suppose if it's aligned with your plan and it works and you're comfortable with it, then
sure,
that's that too.
Yeah, good.
All right, Jake, money buys happiness, even if you're already rich. What have you got here?
How about this one, Cory? We talked about money doesn't buy happiness, but this article actually defutes that a little bit. It says, this is a quote, "No single factor, including money, dominates the equation. Relationships, jobs, and the country you live in all influence happiness." So let's be clear, it's not just money. But the point of the article, Cory, is that more money even makes people who already have the basic human needs taken care of, it also makes them happier when they make more money. So I'm curious, Cory. So what it was getting at is I don't remember what it was. I think it was $75,000 a year is the base household income. So the argument was making more money above that wouldn't increase your happiness, but they did a study that people that made a lot more than that, when they got a 10% raise, they were happier too.
Yep.
So my question to you, Cory, is this part of the American dream? Or do we think this is a fundamental for being a human being? Because a lot of European countries aren't as, they don't work as much as Americans, or not as motivated by money necessarily. So do we think this is an American thing? Or do we think this is just a human thing? If you worked in a village in some remote part and you found out you're going to get a 10% raise, do you think you'd be happier? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Do you have thoughts on this?
Yes, I do. My opinion is that it really, Jake, is probably part of the American dream, more so than it is a fundamental well-being for humans, because there's been lots of different civilizations and populations over the years that, material wealth has and has not been a part of their life. And I don't think that, Native Americans, Jake, is a perfect example, in the United States. And I don't think that whether or not people had money was the biggest influence of whether or not they were happy. But despite that, I do think that it is part of the American dream. And I think that you mentioned Europe and a few other places. I think that, there are other countries out there whose system is more set up to be more aligned with not having necessarily the opportunity, an uncapped opportunity, but basically there's people that pay more money in taxes. There's more social welfare, well-being programs, et cetera. These things exist in other places that, really in a lot of ways have been underfunded in the United States, but that really is part of in my opinion, that's all tied in with this. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It's saying that I do think that's probably more unique to Americans. What's your opinion?
Well, you and I, to get a little personal about our situation, you and I, we found room in our budget. Our company has grown. Remember, we talked about you and I, it wasn't going to be a 10% raise, but it was going to be meaningful for both of us as owners, right? And I found myself, I don't know if it's because I had this article in the queue or after I read, but I put two and two. I found myself when you and I we just hypothetically discussed this for 2025 of giving ourselves a raise because our business was in really good shape. I want to hear your answer. I found myself, though, those few days after we had that conversation, happier. But even though I don't need the money, which is weird to me, I found myself happier. Did you?
Yes.
Now, what's funny is we wound that back and we decided not to do that for ourselves because we found other avenues to invest it in to hopefully make our business better. Did you get sad when we unwound it? I didn't really get sad.
No, not sad.
but I found it interesting. So
yeah,
again, maybe it is an American thing.
You're right.
But what's weird to me though, Cory, is I don't need it. I don't need like if you and I were going to give ourselves that raise, it wouldn't have changed my life. It really wouldn't have. It really wouldn't
Yeah.
have changed anything. Like maybe I would save more. Maybe Rachel and I would go on a nicer vacation. I don't know, but it wasn't going to like materially. Maybe it would. I don't know. I didn't like already have the money spent. Is my point. Like I didn't like, ooh, with this raise, I'm going to buy a second home or you know another car or whatever.
Which is actually, that's really good. And I think that is insightful, Jake, because to your point there, I'm the exact same way. And I do think there is something there that we should talk about briefly. And it's just that, right? If you are growing your income or you are expecting a boost for one reason or another in your income at work, that, you know, giving yourself time to determine what's the right way to handle that additional income, as opposed to spending it before you've earned it, Jake. I think the comment you made there was, it's not as if this was money that was already spent. And I think that, you know, for increases in income, that's the way that, generally speaking, we could all do ourselves a favor and look at it more that way and say, all right, if I received a boost in income, what does this mean? Instead of, I'm going to start buying things now or spending money now because I know I'm going to make more money.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, you got to wait for that to filter in. And then I think the important thing is to bring awareness to it. Like, if that was going to make me happier, why? And maybe that'll keep things more level, because I don't want that. Like, I don't want a raise to drive my emotions. Like, it's okay that it does, because emotions, they happen. You always can't control what you feel. But I thought it was very interesting, is my point. So I agree with this article that, like, even if you give people that are financially stable and solid a 10% raise or whatever it is, a meaningful raise, probably can create some joy in their life. It's pretty interesting to me.
Does that also mean, though, Jake, that it is because that is true, right? Or according to this article, because that's true, does that also mean then that people shouldn't say things like money doesn't buy happiness?
Right.
And for someone who isn't in that situation, I can imagine it's like, you know, I've heard the expression, right, that people should have an abundance mentality, which I think it's easier for somebody to have an abundance mentality when they're already rich, right, as opposed to someone that doesn't have resources. But I do think the point there is at least just shining a light on it and recognizing it. And that in our country, in the United States, right, it is, you know, as somebody has earned more wealth, oftentimes that is aligned or viewed with their success. So I do think it's part of how we're wired, and it's part of our being in our country, that people want to do well for themselves. And that's not a bad thing. It's really
right. And here's a good call to action is I want you to email Luke at Falcon Wealth Advisors. I want to hear from our audience. Do you think an increase in money would make you happier? And I would challenge people, because at first I would say no, but we had this exercise, like we didn't even know we were doing this experiment on each other. But it did. We found in the budget a way to give us a raise. I felt happy about it. Then we decided to deploy that money, back into the company, which was fine. I didn't feel sad, which is good. It would have sucked to feel sad, because I created it all.
Right.
So, but my point is, it does. I don't think that makes you a bad person. I don't think it makes you greedy. I don't think it's evil. I don't think anything's bad about that. But I do want to hear that from our audience. But yeah, I agree, Cory. I don't think you should say money doesn't, because it does, apparently, to this study. It does. And so there's some ways you can do that, though, like we talked about. And like hard work is one of them, right? Or understanding where you're saving and spending money. If you get all three of those correlating, maybe you can find 10% more in your budget to spend, because you just get all three of those together. So there's other ways to do it. So my point is, I think having awareness and checking in on it is awesome, is impactful. And I think that's a good place to wrap up today's show. Do you have any other thought, any other parting comments?
Yeah, one more quick one. I do think that being able to work hard and ultimately have the opportunity to earn financial rewards because of that, I think can be a beautiful thing. That is something that is unique. It's just not that way everywhere. It's very unique to us here in the United States. I think being able to work hard and being rewarded for it is something that's really powerful. That can provide sustainability for people, Jake, to keep going, as opposed to just trying to get rich quick, right? Or trying to find the next way to make a quick buck. I think that working hard and building something that has staying power is something that can really create a positive life experience. And if it creates financial rewards that we've determined now, Jake, will help people feel happier, great. right? That's a good thing too.
That is good. That is good. Now, isn't it these Scandinavian countries that always come off as the happiest countries?
I think
And,
so.
and aren't they socialistic over there?
I think it. I don't know about every individual country, but I think
Yeah.
it's. We're unique here. We've got hundreds of. We've got billions of. Hundreds of millions of people in our country, right? And the land mass is huge. And I just think that political systems that work somewhere with 10 million people probably aren't going to work somewhere with 300 million. It's just the way it is. And I think the same kind of going back to what we talked about elsewhere in Europe too. Again, in terms of people that are paying taxes, what those dollars are supporting, what type of programming there is available for people. It's
Hold on.
ultimately influenced
Hold
by
on.
culture. And we
Hold
know
on.
what our
That's a good point, though. I never thought about it that way. So if the sample size is a lot smaller and this country is off the charts at happiness, is that really an apples to apples comparison to America when we might have 5 times as many people or twice as many people, whatever, a lot more people? Good point, Cory. I didn't think about it that way ever. What was your point you were finishing up? I just wanted to
No, my
highlight that.
point there really is whatever it is that's leading to people being happier there, whether that is lifestyle, whether it's benefits that are provided from the government. People have talked about incentivizing or encouraging people to have more children, right?
Right.
Or people to take time off. All of those kinds of things. It's ultimately a cultural decision, right? That's made, and I just don't think that's something that's applicable for 5 or 10 million people is going to be the same for 300 million. And my point about here in the United States is that because we have the freedom and because we have the opportunity to build and grow something for ourselves, that's the choice that we've made collectively, culturally, as a society. And that's the reason I think, Jake, that people talk about whether somebody in Europe or elsewhere is happy or this or that. Sure, maybe the system, for the lack of a better term, is more aligned with what that person individually finds to be appropriate. But at the end of the day, in the United States, we know what the American dream looks like, and we know what the system here has
Right.
rewarded, and that's hard work.
Right. That's what it's founded on. Good, Cory. Good. Let's wrap up. So thank you again for joining me, Cory. And thank you all, as always, for tuning in. Please like and share our content, and we hope you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Upticks. Click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. Also, be sure to visit our website, falconwealthadvisors.com, and click the Contact Us button if you'd like to meet with Jake and his team.